Hey everybody, it's Andrea. Thanks so much for stopping by my channel today. I want to take a few minutes and show you how to make some really fun tags and not to have to do an ounce of stitching on them. These are easy. I use cardstock, Textiles, a digital image, and a glue stick. I love a stitched edge. I really do. And I think that it makes a beautiful finish and it has its place. But for something like this, having stitching on it to me took away from it. And I wanted the emphasis to be on the textile and the image that I created in here. And then stitching on this one didn't feel like it was going to provide value. So all I use for these, you guys, is a standard piece of cardstock, and I pre-cut it. And then I select textiles that are going to go, I want to say with the color of the image, but in this one, she was actually equally as dark as this one, and I went for a lavender and light purple. So you don't really have to stick with the color of your image. And I get these textiles, the ones that I'm using here, I get these from Sheila Gingerich, and I will link her information in the description box. But it's very, very simple. This one is simply the cardstock. I put some lace down as a base, glued this, and clipped this on with quilt clips and glue. And then I don't ink my edges always with our really dark colors. A lot of times we get really interested in defining the border of what we're working with by using a dark colored ink. What I do when I'm trying to work with something like this is I don't want to take away from this, but I still want that defined border. So I'll go to something that's more neutral and going to meet my needs, which is to have that definition of finish, but without having a bunch of color distracting. So I'm going to set these aside, and we're going to make 2 of these today. I have found some of the most beautiful digital images, and so you just saw 2 of them. This is a third on Etsy, and I will link the artist's name in the description box. But I went ahead and pre-tore one of them, and that's really all I do is I tear them. And I'm gonna take and work on my neon blue workspace here. So sorry for the podium in the way, but it's just easier to work. And so I tear it to the approximate size that I'm gonna want, and then I simply take and glue it to that image and then trim it. So you're gonna do a little craft with me time here. Sorry about that. It takes longer, but I will put it down where I want it on my cardstock. And it doesn't have to go straight either. You know, a lot of times we're gluing images and we want them exactly straight, but I might not want that if the angle of this image gives me something different. And then I just take a quick second and trim the edges off. So now I have my digital image attached to my cardstock, and then I'm going to go through my textile selections. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm doing this really as fast as I can and making a few mistakes, but you'll get the gist. So I'm going to go through the textiles that I have and see what's going to go best. Now, one would look at this and immediately think, oh, well, we should probably stick with the yellows. And that was kind of my thought, was that I needed to do that. But wouldn't she look exceptionally pretty with maybe some pinks? So I'll go through my different textiles and see, kind of lay things down and see what would work well. Would she look beautiful with some blues? We also have, you know, there's so many different colors of things out there that we could play with. So I decided on this one, I am going to go with the pink. And when I do this, the truth is I'm just working from what I have on hand and making sure that it's going to cover the torn space. So see, I have this one, and if I bunch it up, I could cut my tag off, but it's gonna show that I have a torn edge there. So I want something that has a little more density to it, and I'll probably use this one as my edging. And I'm just gonna take my glue stick and put glue, and you can see probably that I'm making it pretty thick because I want this trim to gather. I never start at the actual edge, even though I know it sounds like waste. I'm going to take it, I'm going to press a piece down and then bring it over. So that now becomes my new edge. Press a piece down and bring it over, press a piece down, bring it over. And what you're doing is creating a ruffling effect while just making sure you have enough to cover all of these pieces that you don't want on display. And it's super simple like that. Now I will end up taking it and I'll put, honestly, I will put a tiny dab. You don't want your glue to show through. So I'll put a tiny dab down at the bottom to hold what I've put down in the direction that I want it. And then I just take and trim off the edges. And again, I'm a little more precise when I'm not working under the observation of a camera. But this will give you, and you don't have to cut it. You can actually leave it extend over the edge, but it depends on what your plans are to use for it. So now I have a beautiful ruffled dress, if you will. This is for her, it's more like the bodice. And then I want to add bling because that's my style. And so I can add it in any direction that I want. But when I'm using something like this, an applique, and I'm not sewing, which I rarely do with appliques because I'm just not that patient, I take my glue stick and I rub it roughly so that I get a lot of glue on it. I rub it onto my glue stick in a rough manner so that it really roughens up the applique surface so that it's coated with glue. And because that applique is so thick, it's not going to show through. So I'll take and apply that like so. And again, trim off my edges. Then I feel like these need balance on the top. I enjoy having a little bit off near the head or up in the corner, whatever works best for you. And in this case, I'm going to kind of make this almost like a little bit of a crown. So I'll cut off that leaf. And I try and cut away any of the extraneous netting. And again, you can be so much more precise with this when you're doing your own work. So covering that so that it's well saturated with your glue stick and it will lay down beautifully. Let's see, which way do we want to go? I'm going to go like that. Now, if I wanted to add something fun, I could throw a little embellishment off here over in the corner. There's so many other things that you can do, but that was basically the creation of a tag that has all of this in it, all of these components in it with no sewing and in just a matter of a couple of minutes. So that's one method. And I want to take you through another that would allow you to use the more solid textiles that you have. And I'm working on a floral journal, so I've kind of pre-picked. We get bundles of beautiful things from Sheila, and I've kind of pre-picked that this is the color that I want to work with because that's the colors in my journal. And so I always start by adhering down. You don't have to do this, but it gives it a more finished look. I will adhere down just some very simple lace so that the edge has definition. And so it's just a second. And again, this one, it's not as important that the glue not show through because it's going to be covered, but we don't want just, gobs and stuff everywhere. So I take this and I apply my lace, and I try not to waste on this one. So I get it so that it's nice and stuck. and then just pick it up and trim it. These are all items that you might have laying around. You might pick things up on Etsy, at a thrift store, all kinds of different. This could be off of a blouse, and you could use that as a base for something like this, and then some trim or something that you've been wanting to use but haven't. And again, I'm not being super exact here, you guys, I'm sorry. For purposes of making this and trying to do it quickly. But there's so many things you probably have sitting in your stock that you'd like to use, but haven't really had the place to use them. Now, if I wanted to on this, instead of trimming off these edges, I could wrap. I could do a wrap around, and it doesn't look bad. It's not required, but it's something that you can do. Okay, well, it's just gonna be a little messy just for what we're doing here today. Sorry about that. So now I'm going to take the design that I have chosen, and I am going to see what basically is gonna lay out the best. Now, what I tend to do is fold this top over when I'm ready, and then adhere whatever color choice, whatever piece I'm planning to use onto the top of that. So I have a lot of different choices, but I think I'm gonna go with this. I like the variety. You could also do, if you wanted, and you wanted to make bling out of it, you could do an applique, or no, maybe I'll do that. I think I like that one. I'll do that one. So what I'm going to do now, and again, it's all about just a glue stick, and I use it liberally. You can see I don't mess around with worrying about there being any shimmer coming through, because I'm really only working on the edges, the top and the bottom, and I don't have an item that is going to be wet or curve. So I get my textile really, really coated with glue, and then I lay it down. And when I do that, if for some reason there's any coiling or anything that wants to happen, there's lots of choices for you out there. I have, I'm fond of the quilting clips. There's the pink clamps. There's lots of different choices for you. This is then going to get folded over. So I am going to wet that. As you can see, it's nice and saturated. If you get, my fingers are sticky. If you get any lift, come in here and really soak on that glue stick. It will make it stay. Fold that over, and then select what you're gonna put at the top. And I don't trim it first. I get it really coated with glue. And I know some people find a lot of ick factor in using glue sticks, but to me, there's a convenience factor in it. So I've got threads going. So I am going to adhere that, and I wanna make sure that all sides are gonna stick. I trim it. And then for something like this, where it's thick like this, I might take my quilt clamps and, really, I'm not used to creating on camera. I'm used to showing what I've created. And just clamp that down and let it dry so that the edges don't tend to lift. And especially the top. If you're doing something like that, put some clamps down on the top. Sometimes I'll run my glue stick over the top to give it just a little extra oomph, and then put my quilt clamps on there and let it dry. When it's all said and done, I take whatever inking method I have decided, and I just run it over the edges. And that gives it that finished definition that I seek without having me have to sew. So with all of that said, we made two a little bit messy because of the pace I was working at, but really beautiful tags with just things that we had on hand. And there's lots and lots and lots of digital images out there that would support this type of work. And I get bundles of these types of textiles from Sheila in so many colors. And so I love having the variety to work from. I have 2 big bins behind me that we just won't show that because that shows my obsession. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I would love it if you would give me a comment below. And don't forget, if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe. And thank you again so much for watching. And mention any tutorials. Whoops, I didn't do that very well, did I? Mention any tutorials in your comments that you would like to see, and maybe I can make that a focus coming soon. Thank you guys very much. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.